Questions?
Governor, there's a bill, actually a couple of bills for first responders that if they track coronavirus, they'd be considered in the line of duty. Is that, and that they would be able to be paid while they're recovering and would go against their sick time. Is that something you support?
I tend not, as an administration, to speak to pending legislation because you never know what it's going to look like when it comes out the other end of the process. But that is something that we've talked with folks in the legislature about. Like everything, it's going to depend on the details.
You support the concept, though?
I think the concept's a reasonable concept, yeah.
On the topic of resources, the Vice President was talking about state houses working with the federal government. Where are we as far as the state of Massachusetts, ventilators, resources that you guys want to get to the base?
We actually got a shipment last night, which was unpacked this morning of ventilators from the national stockpile. There were 100 of them. The process for distributing them was developed by the medical advisory group that the command center put together a couple of weeks ago, and those will be distributed based on the work that was done by that group, which included, by the way, both teaching hospitals and community hospitals, and my guess is they'll be distributed over the course of the next 24 hours.
Earlier last week, you said that we're going to get 1,000. We're expecting 1,000. Are you getting 100 instead of 1,000?
We believe that the process as it's been laid out to us is going to be an incremental one. We don't believe this is the last shipment. We fully expect that we'll get additional ventilators over the course of the next 2 weeks.
But you were expecting 1,000 at the end of this week, the beginning of next week?
That's correct, yep.
How long will the site be up and running, and how many more of these sites do we really need in order to test out the bills?
I think it's going to run as long as it needs to. One of the things about dealing with an unprecedented outbreak like this is it's very hard to draw big conclusions about exactly how it's going to work and how long it's going to last. Our view on this is that, as the Lieutenant Governor said, you're going to have first responders putting themselves in difficult and complicated situations for a while, and obviously we're going to run this site as long as it takes to make sure that we can continue to ensure that they get tested and tested promptly. We've been having conversations with our colleagues in Western Mass and our colleagues in the Merrimack Valley, and I think you can expect to see additional sites open up in those parts of Massachusetts sometime later this coming week.
Governor, you talked about the surge. Are you encouraged by another field hospital, BCEC, going up today in case those numbers do surge in the month of April?
So there are a number of sites that are under discussion or under development with respect to additional hospital field capacity, and one of those obviously is the one the Lieutenant Governor and I toured at the DCU Center in Worcester last week. There's another one that's being developed as we speak at the BCEC for what I would describe as Greater Boston, but there's also one that's going up on the Cape at Joint Base Cape Cod that is being led by the folks at Mike Lau and the folks at Cape Cod Hospital, and there's also a conversation going on about potentially doing one in Western Mass as well. Those are in combination with some of the sites that have been developed both on the acute hospital side, where certain facilities are either making floors or entire facilities, COVID-19 specialty facilities or specialty sites, as well as some of the skilled nursing facility capacity that is being put up as well. But the goal here, obviously, is to be able, when people are ready to move from an acute level of care, because they no longer need to be there, but they still need to be watched over and cared for, to be able to move them to a lower level site with a significant amount of sort of clinical capability and equipment to serve them, so that the hospital, the acute facility, can continue to serve additional people who not only are COVID-19 folks, but also are other folks who are dealing with the many other issues that our hospitals deal with in Massachusetts every day. In the end, you're probably talking about somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 additional beds.
Governor, the way this piecemeal way that stuff's coming in from the national side, does that make it more difficult for the plant? You're planning for 1,000, only getting 100. Now you have to start from scratch again and figure out how are we ready for the surge?
again, when you're dealing with an unprecedented circumstance, you do a lot of modeling, and as I've said many times, all of our modeling is based on what we know as of today. Okay, and our anticipated assumption here is that sometime around April 10th, we expect we're going to head into the peak of the surge, and that sometime around April 20th, we should reach the sort of top of the apex and then start coming down on the other side. But those numbers could be off by a few days. We were talking at one point that it was somewhere between the 7th and the 17th. Some people have talked between the 5th and the 15th. There's some discussion about whether or not a lot of the social distancing, stay-at-home advisories, essential work orders that we've issued have actually flattened the curve a little and pushed it out. So my answer to your question is we are planning for a variety of scenarios. And obviously you'd love to have every single piece of gear you need as you head into it, but we're going to make adjustments as we go. And we talk to our colleagues in the healthcare community and in the first responder community practically every day. And the reason we talk to them every day is because we know we're going to have to be fairly nimble about the way we play this out based on a number of unknowns that you simply can't predict. I will say this, as we stand here at Gillette, the availability of 1 million masks through that initiative that we pursued with the Kraft Group is a tremendous asset in terms of taking that issue and that question about available N95 masks sort of off the table, and at least for the short term. The fact that we also have this joint initiative with Partners Healthcare and the Mass Hospital Association around this decontamination machine, which will probably start operating sometime this week and has the ability to decontaminate N95 masks and has been approved by the FDA somewhere between 5 and 10 times, is a game changer with respect to our ability to be pretty sure about the availability of that type of equipment over the course of the surge. But a lot of this other stuff, we're just going to have to manage as we head into it and make adjustments as we go.
What do you say to those healthcare professionals who are going to try to staff those ECU? They're coming basically to help out. What do you message to them?
Well, I said last week that when the Lieutenant Governor and I met the Kraft plane at Logan Airport, I said that, the word that meant the most to us was gratitude. Some people called it a celebration. My view was this was a chance for us to say thank you to people who are putting themselves in very difficult circumstances and situations every single day. And, I talked to Eric, you and I talked to Eric Dixon about this, who's the CEO of UMass Memorial. He has 500 volunteers who have signed up to help them run and operate that DCU center. And he's got people coming out of UMass Medical School. He's got people coming out of nursing programs. He's got retired folks coming back. Mike Lau said the same thing about the work they're doing down on the Cape to staff up for their operation. We are in Massachusetts blessed because we are a sort of world leader when it comes to healthcare generally, and as a result, we have lots and lots of people who are very mission-driven, who are responding to a call in this particular circumstance and situation, and want to be there for their neighbors and their friends and their colleagues, and we're going to do all we can to make sure they have the gear they need. But our message is going to be all about gratitude. Gratitude for the people who are working here at this site, who put this up in 4 days, and this was the National Guard, the hazmat folks, the state police, the Foxborough Fire Service, the folks from WellPath, the folks from the Department of Corrections who did most of a lot of the gear that's being used over there. I mean, there's a lot of people putting a lot of effort into making sure that we're as prepared as we can be. And yeah, our word on this one is thank you, and God bless, especially on Palm Sunday.
With that being said, do you feel comfortable being all the ventilators and everything available, that we'll have enough staffing to be able to manage those as well once this surge happens?
We're working the staff piece with the Medical Society and a lot of the folks in the health care community pretty much every day. And And there are three big issues around this. One is where these folks live, okay? Because you want to try and match them with a place that's fairly close to where they are. And the second is what is their skill set? What was their credential? And are there things we need to be doing to make sure that that their credential will fit into the operating models that are being used on this extra capacity that's being developed? And then the third is how much time are people able to devote to it, and how do we build that so that we have the capacity, working with our colleagues in the healthcare world, to do this on a 24/7 basis, which is basically what you need to be able to do to support the folks that are going to be served.
Last question.
Governor, the New York Times are quoting French officials saying they had masks bought out by a high bidder, Tarmac, China. Are those the masks we got?
I don't believe so. Obviously I can't speak to the specifics of that. What I can tell you is that we believe, based on the conversations that we had, that when I first reached out to the Kraft family to find out if they would be able to help us figure out how to get the gear from China to the U.S., we already had, that was almost 2 weeks ago, we already had a secured purchase in place. So I don't think that's us. Thanks very much, everybody.
Do you agree, one last thing, do you agree with the CDC guidance about face masks?
So, as I understand the CDC's new guidance, it's basically, if you are outside and if you are going to be outside in a way where you don't have the ability to engage in the kind of social distancing that we and others have been messaging for a while now, then they do recommend wearing a mask to basically ensure that you don't infect somebody else. I mean, that's the primary purpose of it. I think that's perfectly appropriate guidance. We're going to do everything we can to make sure we continue to engage in the social distancing, because I said before that, the social distancing, the hand washing, the hand sanitizing, wiping surfaces off, doorknobs. I mean, these are, in many respects, one of the primary carriers of this thing, and people need to understand that. One of the things they have said about masks is it keeps your hands away from your mouth, which is also a good thing. But I think the CDC's guidance, which is if you're going to be in a place where you don't believe you have the ability to do the other recommended issues associated with distancing and hygiene, that you should consider wearing a mask to protect you and others. I think that's perfectly reasonable guidance, yeah.